Hello and welcome back. In this tutorial, I'm going to show you how to make light beams coming off your text using your 3D tools in Photoshop. You'll need probably CS4 or CS5 in order to complete this tutorial, just to give you a heads up. With that, I'm going to go ahead and just get started. The first thing that we're going to do is we're going to double click on our background layer and make sure that it's unlocked. And we're going to press Control-I to invert that layer and make it black. If that didn't work for some reason, just make sure your foreground layer is black. And use your paint bucket tool and just fill that layer in with black. Or fill it in with black however you want, but just fill it in with black. The next thing that we're going to do is we're going to pick some text. I'm going to go ahead and just type out Glazefolio design blog. Glazefolio design blog, because that's who's bringing you this tutorial. And as you can see, my color was black. I'm going to make it kind of a light yellow, because that should be kind of interesting with our light beams. So now we have our text, Glazefolio design blog, and I'm just going to kind of center it in the middle of our page here. And I might, even though you might not be able to see it quite as well, I'm going to go ahead and make it a little smaller just to make sure it all fits on our canvas as we get into our 3D. So I'm going to take it down to 36. I'm at Arial Bold 36 if you're following me step by step. And I'll just put that in the middle there once again. And I'll go ahead and zoom in for you so you can see a little better. But I'll zoom back out pretty soon. Anyway, the next thing that we're going to do is we're going to go up to Edit, Transform, Flip Horizontal. And we're going to do that because of the way that the 3D reacts with the text. We'll be flipping it back shortly as well. And you can you'll see what I'm talking about. Okay. So what we'll do now is we'll go up to 3D, down to Repose, and down, and we'll select Text Layer. And it says this text layer must be rasterized before proceeding. Its text will no longer be editable. Rasterize the text. Yes. And it might take a couple seconds for this panel to open up, depending on your system. It'll take a couple seconds on mine. If you're using a Mac, it might open quicker. Okay, so what we're going to do in here is this is all of our Repose kind of options. We're only going to change two things in here. What we're going to do is we're going to change this extrude depth to 4, and our scale, which is right next to that, to 2. And then we're going to press OK. We don't need to change anything else. And as you can see, that kind of is going pretty far out, and that's why I made my font a little bit smaller. So hopefully it's all fitting on the page. Let's zoom out a little bit. And yes, it is. If I hadn't zoomed out, there's a good chance that it wouldn't have fit on the page. So now what we'll do is, with that layer selected, we're going to go down to this icon here, and we're going to click and hold. And we're going to make sure that we're on our 3D Object Rotate tool. And that's what it looks like. If you go to full screen, you might see it a little better. And what we're going to do is we're going to go up to our Z value up at the top, and we're going to make it 180. We'll click Enter. And that'll flip it back around for us. And now, as you can see, it's going off the page. So what we'll do is we'll go to our 3D tool, and we'll go to, and it doesn't matter a ton if it's going off the page, because actually we'll go ahead and just leave it that way, and I'll prove it to you. Going off the page might be a little bit nicer in the long run, so I'll just leave it like that. Because what we're going to be seeing is our hard text is set back here. We're going to make this front part invisible, and those will be how our light beams come off. So it doesn't matter right now that those are going off the page. Anyway, so we just flipped it around. The next thing that we are going to do is open up our 3D panel. We'll go up to Window, down to 3D. It'll open up our 3D panel. And then what we'll do is we'll go over to our third icon over at the top, and that's our 3D material. And we'll go down to back inflation material and make sure the opacity is set to 0. We'll press Enter, and what it'll do is set our back to 0. That's why we inverted it, or flipped it horizontally rather, initially, to make this our back. Then when we flipped it back, this is what we got, and that's long story short why we did that. Okay. The next thing that we're going to do is go to our extrusion material, and we're going to click on this folder next to the opacity, and we're going to click New Texture. We want to make sure that our size and resolution and color mode is all the same as the document that we have, and it should be by default, and mine is. So we'll click OK. And then the next thing that we're going to do is go to where that folder was, next to opacity, and click Open Texture. And that'll open up a new document, per se, and what it really is a mask. And we're going to set it as a gradient to kind of create our light beam effect, and you'll see how that works in a second. But what we'll do, you can either create a gradient that goes from black to gray. I personally like to set a grayish background and make it a gradient that goes from black to invisible. So what I'll do is I'll press Shift Delete, and that'll bring up our fill options, and I'm going to just set the foreground color, which is black, and I'm going to set the opacity to 50, and that's going to give me a medium gray background. Then what I'm going to do is I'm going to select my gradient tool, and I'm going to make sure that the black to invisible gradient is selected. As you can see, I have that. That's what it looks like if you have the right one selected. And what I'll do is I'll simply just create a gradient over this gray, and I want it to come up a little bit farther than that, actually. Maybe something like that might be pretty good. I'll stick with that and see how that works. Then what you'll do is you can just click on that and click Yes to save the layer, pretty much, or it'll save onto your text layer pretty much as your clipping mask. But make sure you have this pretty good, because it's hard to go back from there. And as you can see, this is what we're kind of left with. What we'll do is we'll go to our 3D rotate tool once again. 3D rotate tool. I was on the wrong one. 3D object rotate tool. And what we'll do is we'll make our orientation X will be 30, Y because I said so. No, just joking. Just making a quick joke there while it's thinking. But we're going to set Y to 15. That'll just it's just kind of a nice thing to do. You certainly don't have to do that. You've left it at Y at 0. This will just, as you can see in a second here, we'll kind of tilt it a little bit, and I think it looks kind of nice. So I'm going to do that. Okay, so the next thing that we're going to do is we're going to want to go to our second icon up here in our 3D tool panel, because we want to make sure that cast shadows and catch shadows are unchecked, because that'll kind of mess with our text in the background. And then after you do that, you're pretty much done, and I'll show you a preview of this as you'll see on your screen probably right now, actually, as you're doing this with me, if you are. You can see something similar to mine, and that just doesn't look good, does it? So what we'll do, sorry it's taking so long, we'll go to our first icon here up at the top, and we'll go to Quality, and we'll go to Ray Traced Draft. And that'll, just like in InDesign or something, we're viewing a lower quality image so that it'll go a little faster. Mine's going pretty slow anyway, but when you go to Ray Traced Draft, it'll show you a draft of what it should look like in its final appearance if you were to save it out. So I'll just give it a couple minutes to think here. Hopefully not a couple minutes, but actually more like a couple seconds. And then I'll just show it to you, and that'll be pretty much it. Looks like it's about done now. And yeah, and that's what you kind of end up with. You have these light beams coming off of your text. Now you can save that out and put it in your website, use it as a header, put it in your videos as kind of a title or something. I'll zoom in a little bit just so you can see it a little better. I don't want to zoom in that much because it's getting pixelated, but yeah, that's your final project and product. And please feel free to play around with all these settings and kind of make it your own. Even why not do your own tutorial if you want. So thanks for watching. I hope you learned something. Please come back, subscribe to my blog, subscribe to my channel, follow me on Twitter and Facebook and all that good stuff. Thanks again.